All right. Good evening, everybody. How are you? I'm having grapes, delicious grapes. They're so tasty. Welcome to Eating Grapes with Maui. Mmm, I love these grapes. These grapes are really good. Thank you for feeding me grapes. Hello, no, I'm just joking, everybody. How are you this evening? My name is Maui. This is the Echo Show with Maui and friends. I'm your host. I'm Maui. Waiting for my co-host here to pop up. Lotus, where art thou? Um, so we have a pretty exciting show today. I'm very excited. I have a very good friend. Um, Kat Nichols, daughter of the awesome Julia, is coming on to talk about her Quarantine Cookbook, and it has been doing some amazing stuff and raising so much money. It's been great. So we're really excited for that. So we're gonna have that happening today, and then we're also going to have after that Dr. Ayana Brown on to talk about the Juneteenth uh, uh, stand in memoriam that we're going to be doing in Forest Park. So I'm super excited to share that with everybody today. So yeah, it's going to be a good time. I see that my buddy Kat's already in the green room, so I'm excited to bring her on in a few minutes. It looks like my co-host did not get my email. I believe they have the link now, so they should be coming in at any time. But in the meantime, let's do some plugs. I'm going to plug, first of all, this talk show started because our season was put on hold. We had a lot of stuff we were looking to do in 2020. We had 4 productions planned. All of that has been pushed to 2021. Doing that has cost us a lot of money, and we are a small not-for-profit, so that has a pretty big impact on us. So the first thing I would say is that if you can, you don't have to, but if you can, please do donate to the Echo Theater Collective. We have the thing scrolling right here, echotheatercollective.org/donate. All that goes to helping us continue our offerings, both virtual and eventually, once the COVID times are over, in person. So there's that. Next up, I'm going to bring in my co-host, the wonderful Lotus is going to come in here. Let's see if Ghost Maui brings in the Lotus. Watch this. No hands, and then oh, there they are.
Oh, it worked.
Hey, sorry, I sent it to your
Maui.
email. I know I usually send it on Messenger. I should have let you know. Apologies.
No problem. Nice to be here.
You missed my really weird grape opening. I was like, "Hi, Maui. I'm eating grapes. Welcome to Eating Grapes with Maui. These grapes are really good.
Grapes are symbolic. You should make a wish.
Really? I did not know that. That's wild and crazy stuff. It's a little Johnny Carson for y'all. So, Lotus, it's been a crazy couple of weeks.
Indeed.
Yeah. The world is a little crazy these days. But we're seeing some amazing stuff happening in the streets that is causing some change.
Yeah, there's actual movement. There's actual conversations. There's actual events. It's not all talk. All of it.
And I've been like, I was pretty depressed. And I'm like, oh, this isn't gonna change anything. You know, they're just gonna beat us up, and then we're gonna go back and be quiet again. And then I saw that article about Minnesota committing to defunding the police.
Yeah,
that shocked me.
I'm not gonna have my expectations too high.
Yeah. Now, I'm worried that some of our viewers might not know what defunding the police actually means.
Oh, yeah.
So I would love it if you could.
Obviously, anarchy.
Right. Yeah. It means anarchy. It means nobody has any protection. Streets will be crazy. Can you explain to people what defunding the police actually means?
Okay. So defunding the police. So every year, most governments will allocate new funds to their police departments. Defunding the police has like many different spirits of it. One is, instead of increasing funding for police, it's kind of pushing towards social services, social resources. Part of the spirit of defunding police is also kind of the idea of like reforming police, take like as far as like weaponry and policies, that things that the police are allowed to do. So there's also a sense of like making sure the police have checks and balances, and then have accountability. So making sure that there's another body that can review police cases. There's actually a lot involved, but there's a lot of places that I think even people in social justice circles want to take it. But in general, it's reallocating and reallocating resources and reforming the police.
Yeah. And and it's funny because a lot of these things weren't done by police before. Like I remember when I was younger, I think it was like in my early 20s, I remember they started defunding like mental health institutions and closing mental health institutions down. And then the burden of helping people with mental health then shifted to police. And, that's extremely problematic. That's not what the police are there for. They don't know how to handle it. They are not, trained in helping people with mental health issues. And, and that's everything, right? Is we stripped away social services, we kept heaping that burden on police and on the prison industrial complex. And that's incredibly problematic. So like, it makes me happy to see things going back in the other direction.
Well, I think it makes sense for everybody because there's usually a root cause to, any kind of crime that happens. And usually it's a crime that society has on the criminals. Like people think, oh, criminals are people that commit crimes unto us. But a lot of the times it's because people don't have mental health services, or they're in poverty, or various different things that people don't have access to, that makes
healthcare,
them more eligible. Healthcare, housing. Yeah, so much.
Yeah, not even a grocery store in the neighborhood. You had to get all your stuff from the liquor store and just get Flamin' Hots and pickles. That's what I grew up on. But if you had access to, food and all these services, you'd be able to do stuff for yourself. If you had access to food, you'd be able to cook. You'd be able to make things. And speaking of that, segue to our first guest.
So smooth.
So our first guest, I mentioned her at the top of the show, my good friend Kat. Now, she made this quarantine cookbook, and we're going to bring her in now, and we're going to hear about that. So everybody, please give it up, and please let her know, let her hear it in the comments. Give her all the love. Black Girl Magic episode. Give it up for the one, the only, Kat Nichols, y'all. Woo! Hey! What's up, friend?
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
What's up? How you doing?
Good. How about you?
I'm going a little crazy being cooped up in the house all day, every day. Yeah, but I'm good. It's so good to see your face.
Good to see yours too.
Yeah.
Wait. So how do you two know each other?
How did we meet? Do you remember how we met? It's been a while.
I don't know how we met, but I know we see each other all the time. Anytime we're at events.
Yeah. So Kat and her Ma Julia have been to a lot of the Echo events that we've done over the years. They just become very good friends. And then when I'm like cruising Facebook, and then all of a sudden I see all this quarantine, this COVID cookbook. I'm like, what? Like, see you in the paper? That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big deal, right? So how do you feel about it?
I like it, but there's some things that I don't like about it.
Like what?
Well, one day I had to do 2 interviews. One was like a surprise, and then the other one was planned. And actually it was kind of funny because I was at a school event, like a goodbye school event for my 8th grade class, and I had to rush out of like the event. It was like a circle of us sitting. I had to run to the car and get on the call with like the radio station. And it was like for the first 2 minutes, it was just playing songs. And then when they got on the call, I actually just like forgot how to talk. I'm like, oh, this is actually real. And then my classmates started making faces at me. So then I almost forgot everything in front of a lot of people.
Yeah, I've had that happen to me. I get stage fright and like I freeze up all the time. Like people don't know this, but like I have like incredible stage fright and like super like, and I get real social anxiety when I'm in crowds. So that's real. Yeah, the adrenaline just through the roof.
That's good that you powered through it.
Yeah.
Your friends weren't helping you out there though.
No.
No. So okay, so first let our audience know, how did you end up making the cookbook?
Well, the cookbook. So how I ended up making the cookbook, it wasn't a backup plan to my original idea, which was a pop-up restaurant at my school, which all the profit would go to Beyond Hunger. But then coronavirus happened and I had to change my plan in a week, which wasn't really the best because—
Wait, a week?
So we spent 3 months prior to this working on our projects, mine would be the pop-up restaurant, which would have happened in around the middle of April. And so we spent 3 months working on these projects. And so a week before the deadline where we were supposed to turn in our project and have it all done, I changed my project. And so I'm like, could I have an extension about creating it? And she's like, yeah, but can you have an idea for the day that we're supposed to turn it in? And I said, yeah. Except I kind of said, yeah, not thinking about how hard it would be, because I'd think of the actual like name, what goes in it, what I'm going to actually do. But by the end of the week, I figured out all of it. And then by, I think it was a month after, I got everything else done.
Wow.
And then
That's amazing. See, that's the resiliency that's baked into our DNA, right? Like you
improvise.
You improvise, right? Like we know how to survive through adversity. That is awesome. That is really cool. Can you tell? Oh, do you have a question, Lotus?
I was just gonna say, like, okay, we gotta talk about these recipes though. Were they these are things that you've worked on for like a long time? You had these in your back pocket, ready to whip them out for the next school project that it was needed for?
Ooh, that's a good point. Let's bring up the cookbook. Let's show the cover and the table of contents. Like, watch this. We got a budget, Lotus. Check this out.
Hold
it's gonna pop up over here.
Did someone donate $20 to us? Oh, there it is. Oh, there's illustrations.
Yeah, it's really cool. So talk us through the cookbook. We're only going to show the first 2 frames because we're not giving out the recipes for free.
Okay, so the first frame, actually, the first photo is the cover, and that took me a day because let's just say, in my family, surprisingly, all my family got good genes for writing. And then I got the worst one. So I have the worst handwriting probably possible. So I had to hold it up to my computer screen and draw everything out and then measure that line in the middle. Because when it comes to art, sometimes I put a lot of effort and sometimes I don't. And this is like something that will go out. So I'm like, I'm going to try. So that's the first one. And then it's also a quote that I just made up randomly.
I think it's a good quote. Simple recipes for socially distant days. I think that's beautiful.
Easy. You got a marketing strategist over here.
All right. So let's show what the table of contents. We can see the recipes. And Lotus was asking, so how did you come up with these? Were they in your back pocket or did you come up with these new?
So with the recipes, I kind of just wanted to do something that first wouldn't take me forever to figure out what the actual recipe would be. And like I guess, the drawing and something I like, because I'm a very picky person. So I decided just to do things that I would normally do on a day that I don't feel like actually cooking, which is most days. um, so most of the recipes are at least up to 5 minutes. One of them is quite long, but everything else is short.
Which one's the long one?
I think the roasted potatoes.
The roasted potatoes, okay.
Yeah.
Just the prep time of cutting up the potatoes and everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, is there a favorite recipe of yours on here?
Yes. My favorite recipe is actually the chocolate peanut butter shake.
I was gonna try and make that. It looks really tasty.
Yeah, that's my favorite one.
Yeah. And you said all this goes to Beyond Hunger. Can we bring up the ticker on the bottom so people can see that? Here it comes. Watch this. There it is. Okay.
There it is.
So all the proceeds go to Beyond Hunger, and currently, I'm gonna go off this screen. I have raised $6,219.
Yes. Wait. I'm gonna put my forks together.
Oh, beautiful. A chef's salute.
Yes.
See, as far as I know, because there was a donation earlier today for $525. And we were we've been thinking about that for quite a while and thinking, did someone actually do that, or was it a mistake? And we still have no information about it, so we just assumed that.
Was it anonymous?
Yeah, anonymous. So
you can't even reach out to them and be like, did you mean to do this?
Well, the thing is, we can't contact that person because we don't actually own the website. Our friend does, because she made it. So I have no clue how to contact this person. Plus, they're anonymous. So we're just gonna go with I raised $2,000.
Thank you.
Wait, I donated earlier. Did I make a mistake and donate $500? Because I don't have $500.
You didn't.
Someone is looking for their $500.
Somebody looking for their $500. Like, why do they have more in my bank account? I don't know.
So, can you tell us about Beyond Hunger? Was that a particular nonprofit that you chose for your project, or was it part of it?
So, why I chose Beyond Hunger is what I've actually been doing for quite a while. Is for my birthdays, I've donated to a certain cause. I've only done a few birthdays where I just got presents, mostly because my mom doesn't want to have more things around the house. So I usually pick a place, and then we donate, or we have people donate in my name to this place. And I've done Beyond Hunger before, and I've worked a lot with Beyond Hunger. My school actually does a food drive around Thanksgiving every year. And I think that's been happening for the last, at least as long as I've been there, which is 9 years. So I also wanted to do something that is food related because I wanted to stick with kind of the theme. And I know my mom knows a lot of people there. I've done also just a lot of other things with them. So I thought it would be a good idea to do that.
Yeah. And then we have 26 people watching live right now. So I hope that some of these people are donating and getting this cookbook. It looks like a great cookbook to do stuff with your kids. It's nice, simple, easy recipes that are tasty. And she's already raised over $6,000. And Beyond Hunger is awesome. That's the Oak Park food pantry that they renamed it. I can't remember what it was named before, but they recently rebranded to Beyond Hunger, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So really, really highly recommend getting this book. I'm hoping that we have some people already donating. It looks like Susan Lucci donated. Yeah. So we already got some people donating from it tonight. That is awesome. Now, before I let you go, Kat, your dream is to open a restaurant, right?
So I thought about it for the past at least couple of weeks, and what I want to do, and I've actually talked to my friends about it. is I want to open like a shop big enough to hold like a certain amount, like a decent amount of people to work, and have seating on the outside, and then have some sort of fun seating, like hammocks or other kind of things. Just so it's small enough that it's not so expensive, but it's nice enough to actually look nice enough for like not like a shack, but go-to eat out restaurant.
And what kind of food would you have there? What would you serve? American fare? Would it be like, Thai, or what would you do?
So probably I wouldn't do like a certain kind of like food. I'd probably just do comfort food, because it's what I do the most. Like make pasta. I make pasta a lot. And then definitely I'd have like a dessert menu, because that's what I kind of not specialize in, but what I do the most. And I can tell you that's what my friends enjoy the most, because at school I'm the person who brings the treats like every month. They're expecting a treat. So
you have a reputation.
Yeah.
I love it. Look at this. We have from Beyond Hunger. They said, Kat, we are really honored you chose Beyond Hunger. Thank you. Oh, that's amazing.
Oh,
that's so cool. Thank you so much for watching Beyond Hunger. Everybody, make sure you donate and get this cookbook. Give it to Beyond Hunger. Kat, thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, once I saw it, I was like, I got to broadcast tonight. I got to get Kat on.
a nice flag.
Really, yeah, love the flag.
Completes the room.
Yeah.
Really ties it together.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. And be sure to check out Lotus and our new show, Designing Rooms, where we design rooms. So that's not a real thing. I just made that up, but you would totally watch that. We'd be on HGTV and we'd be adorable.
Be great.
All right. Well, it is late, and I'm sure you got to get to bed soon. So I'm gonna let you go. I'm usually like, nah, I'm a night owl, son. But get out of here with that.
She's like, I got a business to run. No time to sleep.
She's like, I'm taking orders. I got to sell cookbooks. Thank you so much, Kat. I'm very proud of you. I really, really miss you. Keep doing the thing. I see it in your future. You're gonna be like the youngest restaurateur and have a show on the Food Network, Cooking with Kat. It's alliterative. People will remember it. It's gonna be good. Keep rocking that black girl magic, okay?
Okay.
All right, and then I'm gonna come over for dinner soon as this COVID times is over.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Bye, Kat.
Bye.
All right. Ghost Stephanie, thank you. So Ghost Stephanie is backstage manning everything for us. It's not just magically happening. I want to shout out Steph, my partner in crime. Love you very much. Thank you so much for helping out tonight. How cool is that? Like,
I couldn't even cook at that age.
Yeah. Well, you throw down. I see.
But I had to learn the hard way,
Like, I think that my food picks look pretty good. Your food picks look like professional.
Yeah, so I hope people can take my opinion, be like, Kat rocks. I can see Cooking with Kat happening.
I can see it too. We're gonna put it on the Echo Network. We're gonna launch that one day. Watch. You mark my words.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have our next guest locked and loaded, ready to go. So our next guest, Dr. Ayanna Brown, is going to be coming in right now. We're going to talk about some stuff that we're doing in Forest Park together. I'm very, very honored to have her on the show. So everybody, welcome Dr. Ayanna Brown to the Echo Show. Hey,
Dr. Brown. Hey. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So first off, can you tell our audience who you are and what you do?
Wow. Okay. So thank you for the introduction. My name is Ayana Brown, Ayana F. Brown. For some people, that starts with doctor. I don't make my mom call me doctor, though.
I put some respect on your name. So, I listened to Miss Mary Hamilton. I was like, put some respect on that name. I got you.
That's okay. I am an associate professor in the Midwest here at Elmhurst College. I'm actually in my office right now because for fear that if I did this in my office at home, you get people walking by and waving in the camera. So I ran away from home and came to my office to do this. So welcome to Elmhurst College. I work in the Department of Education as an associate professor of literacy and cultural studies. And much of the work that I do in my research revolves around classroom conversations and discussions of race. I teach a series of courses that range from historical foundations of American education all the way through literacy, reading courses, race and equity, which is an award-winning course, as a matter of fact, here at Elmhurst College. And my research in terms of what I write about, what I publish about, deals with issues of equity and race, and how do we see these things magnified in the way students and teachers have conversations in classrooms. So it's interesting that when you've been researching and writing about this for, over 12 years, and you have a lot of teacher educators, career professionals who talk about the discomforts in discussing race. And now they're in a moment where everyone's having this conversation, whether they want to or not. And quite frankly, even in the absence of dialogue, people have been still having the conversation, because when you are silent, you are indeed speaking. So race talk, plainly said, is not a new conversation at all, but it's now one that it demands that silence is no longer permissible. And here we are grappling with the responsibility and the accountability for silence and the catastrophes that are involved with complacency.
Mm.
Oh, Maui, don't
class.
Come on, man. Oh, I just love hearing you. I could just listen to you talk all day.
Yeah, it's almost like she's a professor or something.
I know, right? It just makes me very excited. Like it just gives me life. Like this is the stuff that gives me energy. Like hearing like Black people speaking truth to power. So that makes me happy. And so you and I, we've met virtually. We've yet to meet in person. But we're working on something together in Forest Park that you were organizing. I'd love if you could tell our audience a little bit about that, because that's what I really want to get into today.
Right. So Forest Park is a charming little village that is west of Chicago, of the Loop, if you will. It's probably the second suburb right outside of the city lines of Chicago. So if you're on the west side of Chicago, you immediately enter Oak Park. And the village right adjacent to Oak Park is Forest Park. And then you have these little enclaves of villages that just kind of run right next to one another. So you get Berwyn, you get Riverside, you get River Forest, and then you continue on. So it's a suburb, if you will, of the city, but it's, you throw a rock and you're right, you're in the city. So Forest Park has always been this sort of what I'm going to call Pleasantville. It's a sweet little town where you have your children riding their bikes and running through the sprinkler, in the front of the lawns, that sort of thing. And as we saw the murder and execution of George Floyd, as we read about the murder of Breonna Taylor and the lynching of Ahmaud Arbery and countless others, we just watched the world literally catch on fire. And as Forest Park has always participated or grew into the participation of its own messaging around Juneteenth and developing a village understanding of Juneteenth and the significance of Juneteenth, we gathered as a small group of people wanting to address how do we discuss race in a pleasant little village while at the same time addressing the memorial and the celebration of Juneteenth, as well as being in memoriam and standing for Black lives as it relates to the deaths of countless African Americans in the United States by the police. So through a series of conversations, and pretty quickly, we've been meeting and talking and emailing and Google Docking and doing all these things to galvanize an effort in order to not just raise awareness, because one would have to be pretty sleep to not be aware of what's happening. And so it's really important that we think about this event as not trying to raise awareness, but how do we situate ourselves within this event? And so our call and our charge is to stand for Black lives in the context of this small little village where one might easily believe that we are eventless. We are without these challenges. Yet we literally are a rock away from the murder of Rakia. When you think about the experiences of what happens in Chicago, many people can say, well, it not in my suburb or not in my area. That's the city. And so we don't want this time or this experience to pass by without our community not just standing for and standing with in protection of Black lives, but also inserting ourselves into what does this mean? So the short version is on Juneteenth, which is Friday, June 19th, our village is supporting us in the launching of a series of events to address race in Forest Park. And so we are treating Juneteenth as a celebration, but we're also treating Juneteenth as an in memoriam, as well as a stand for Black lives. We are occupying the bridge, and there's a wonderful bridge that people jog over, walk over, ride their bikes over on Circle Avenue that crosses over to the other end of Forest Park. And for symbolic reasons of occupying the bridge, crossing the bridge, addressing the significance of bridges, Black people have been lynched, hung, murdered, and thrown over bridges. So this bridge is important, that we occupy this bridge as a way to honor the people who have been erased from the conversation over the murders that have happened at the hands of the police, as well as to affirm Black people in Forest Park and in Chicago that you are protected and we are standing to protect you. So we have a series of things that we're planning. I'm going to pause here just so I can allow Maui to toss in, because then I'll start launching into the series. But,
no, I'm just sitting here. Yup. Yeah. So, and for those of you who are watching who don't know what Juneteenth is, in my opinion, that's my Independence Day, right? That Juneteenth. So, January 1st, 1863, I believe, was when Lincoln did the Emancipation Proclamation. By the June 19th, 1865 is when that decree finally reached Texas, the last state in the Union, to hear about this proclamation. And so that is when we consider the day when America truly was free, was truly an independent country. Of course, as we see today, we're still fighting for actual freedom. I believe, we're still ever striving toward that ideal. But that is the day that we celebrate.
Of what is freedom?
It's something I've been meditating on a lot.
I'm kind of interested in your answer, Dr. Brown, too. What will it mean to truly be free? What is freedom to you?
Yes, I noticed she said your answer, Dr. Brown, which means now it has to be extra.
Well, now it's official.
What do you think about that, Ayana? Tell me your thoughts, Ayana. No, she put Dr. Brown on top of that first. Thanks a lot. So I'm gonna unpack this in a couple of different ways. And it's important to know that when we're talking about how do you humanize a group that has been dehumanized, when you enslave people, you are actively working to take away their humanity. And in taking away one's humanity, in order for that to have a sense of permanency, you have to have multiple strategies in removing that humanity. So you do it legally, you do it economically, you do it legislatively, which is the legal part. You do it educationally. You remove linguistically. You take away their language. Spiritually, you take away their right to honor, their right to pray, their right to speak. So you use many strategies to enslave people. And so when we talk about enslavement and creating a condition of slavery for people of African descent, and then you allow this people to grow your country economically, in order for these generations of people to survive, they had to have tapped into their own sense of humanity that was devoid of the law, that was devoid of the economy, that was devoid of the education. So when I think about the contestation behind the idea of freedom, you're talking about generations of people who had to access freedom internally. They had to access spiritual growth internally. They had to commune and pass on and to develop something greater beyond the physical. It had to be a metaphysical relationship with an understanding of one's life, one's rights, one's existence beyond the physical state that they were in. So freedom for African American people has never existed if we think about this in the context of the law, the economy, housing, food, education. There is no such thing as freedom for African American people in that regard. What you have is generations and legacies of people who have persisted within the inhumanity to access freedom based on their own terms. So in the context of education, one way in which I describe it, that you have bodies of educated Black people who've been tremendously successful in a system that was never designed for them to be successful. The education system was never designed so that African American people could access it and thrive within it. And so if this system has never been designed in its creation, and for some people in its maintenance for their success, the very success that you see with African American people is something beyond the structure. It's something that they have access beyond what the system has done. And sure, there have been allies here and there, people who've jumped in, people who have invested in order to make these things happen. But in order for Black people to thrive and survive, it's beyond systems, because it's systems that have worked for generations to maintain our oppression. So here's the long way around that question of what is freedom then? Well, freedom isn't something that you're given. You know, Lincoln certainly signed a document, but you created a context for the Walking Dead because you have people who accessed sort of the right to not be enslaved, but they were still enslaved by a sharecropping system. They were still enslaved by an educational system. They were still enslaved by a military system where you fight for a country that does not fight for you. So when we tap into what does it mean to be free, that means we're tapping into what do I have access to and how am I going to maximize my opportunities within that access, knowing that there is a system of limitations already present to withhold me from the greatest of the opportunities. So, you know, it is the very impetus for Frederick Douglass's famous Rochester deliverance of what to the slave is the 4th of July, the very notion that it's nothing, right? And so for us, Jubilee or Juneteenth is this celebration of a time where we can say in document, this is a celebration, but not in practice. It is the great shame of the nation that the rhetoric of freedom is not a rhetoric that truly is applied and lived in the experiences of African American people. So freedom is what you make it, but at the same time, freedom is also what you demand. And that is where we are now, where the enough or the free-ish, like black-ish, you know, free-ish, you know. So that is the experience that we're having now. And the duality of that is, how do you encourage children who have greater access than my grandmother, who have greater access than my grandfather? They have access to it, but what they are witnessing is that all the illusions that are given to them about merit, and if you work hard, you will succeed. If you follow the rules, everything's available to you. If you do these things, there's no reason why you can't be successful. And what our youth are experiencing now is the lie that is sold within the illusion. And now it's no longer an illusion. It's very, very clear that freedom is a concept. It's a construction. Now, you know, whether or not that construction and the law are going to line up.
Yeah. And that's and that's like, and by design, you know, by the United States of America's design, that
let a few people in the cracks.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it's funny because we're talking right now about like, what is freedom? And that's I feel like that question, like we hear it echo throughout our past. You just mentioned Frederick Douglass. I just read Frederick Douglass's 4th of July speech last week on the show. Then also read James Baldwin's pin drop speech from his Buckley debate, and then the piece of my own. But you know, so in that echoes throughout all of those. What is freedom? Why can't I be free? And then, you know, in just hearing the way that you phrase that, Lotus, that question, immediately made me think of Nina Simone's song, I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free. All right, and you look at those lyrics, you know, like, I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things that I should say them loud, say them clear for the whole round world to hear. You know, that freedom's always been an illusion. Like, the chains just became invisible. You know, they got smarter about how they oppressed. They didn't necessarily stop the oppression. You know, yeah. Oh wow, I could listen to you talk all day, Dr. Brown.
Even just like not knowing the history, right? Of like, why is it that the only thing that Black kids will hear in school, the earliest point in history they'll know of themselves, is slavery? That's like the only thing that kind of we're known for in history textbooks. And like, even that is like, you're starting at a young age, like almost telling kids like enslavement is your entire history,
right? Because they cut us off from the rest of that, from this like the thousands of years before that of
all of civilization. What was that?
Yeah,
right. Well, you know, it's so we have a strange relationship, if you will, with our understanding and our experiences within Black history, or American history, quite frankly, diasporic history. We have a very strange relationship, because as you get schools, colleges, universities, K-12 institutions, if they should dive into world history oftentimes does not even include the African continent, right? World history or Western civilization, right, will take on sort of these ancient spaces, if you will. And then when you do world history, somehow or another, Africa is not in the world either. So you're talking about an ideological construction of Blackness and what constitutes intelligence, what constitutes worthy, notable information that determines what sort of gets included. But, you know, what I challenge us on is that even if you have curriculum, content, textbooks, teachers who like to begin the existence of Black people in the United States at the point of 1619, even if they dare begin with Jamestown, Virginia, the growth and the development of the brilliance and genius of Black people still cannot be denied from 1619 to 1881. When you get to July 4th, 1881, and Booker T. Washington opens the doors of Tuskegee Institute, which becomes Tuskegee University, for every historically Black college and university that has grown either as a result of allies, donors, investments, or the painstaking work when the former enslaved can bring you 4 chickens, a horse, and a cow and say, this is all I have to give you, but feed those kids so that they can continue learning. There is a thriving and long striving legacy of Black brilliance of the experiences that get us here today. So on the one hand, it is an atrocity that our children might believe that the inception of their identities begins with enslavement. But at the same time, if you work that enslavement narrative and you teach all of history, you would then be at a marveled moment to recognize that the brilliance of who we are today is because someone marched, led, breathed, died, fought, didn't give up. We are a relentless, persistent, creative people. And as a result of that, you get us now. So sure, start your story with 1619. We can work those 422 years too.
Preach.
No problem.
Preach.
And we ought to do that. You know?
That gets to the core of what we do with our Echo Theater Collective. Like, you know, the core philosophy, our Echo Love philosophy is that, yeah, a lot of trauma, that's real, right? A lot of trauma was passed down, but like also there's all this brilliance that was passed down too. And part of what we have to do is be able to reclaim our narrative and say, no. You know, we were a lot more than slaves, you know, and we did a lot, like all that, everything you just mentioned is so just, yeah, like if you look at the scientific advancements of George Washington Carver, if you know, you ever see the movie something the Lord Made? I can't remember the doctor it's about. Right. What's his name?
Well,
do you remember?
Most definitely the main character. Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's like you know.
John Hopkins University, the study of blue babies.
What else? You know, sports. You see what we did in you know, we took over every sport. We took over you know, music. You know, rock and roll. That comes from Black folk. You know, like jazz, a whole new form of music. Like we create in every field, while being murdered, while being killed.
We can talk about the commodification of Blackness and how it becomes a core source for capitalism in the United States. There isn't anything that gets marketed, promoted, sold, bought that isn't commodified as a result of the creativity of Black people. Right. Undeniable. Okay. So even when you know, it's that quote that people say, you know, they want our rhythms, but they don't want our blues. You know, you want to utilize the creativity, but you don't want to deal with our story. You don't want to engage with who we are. And as we enter into this moment, you have African Americans as well as other people who are standing up now as anti-racists, who are locating themselves and saying, because I am here now, and because I can no longer say, well, I didn't do it. You know, I didn't live back then when these things were happening. I didn't do it. People are now having to reckon with that if you are not speaking up, if you are not actively questioning legislation, policy, practices, school boards, curriculum, if you are not engaged in the practices of dismantling racism, then you are indeed engaged in the practices of sustaining and maintaining racism. And no longer can this be a conversation about what I did not do because I didn't live way back then, which is the convenient discourse for passive racists. So we have an opportunity, and I think it begins with remembering those people who have unfortunately lost their lives at the hands of a racist system and racist practices. So in Forest Park on June 19th at 6:00, we will name the names of all of those who have been taken from us over the last 10 years. It's a challenge. And while we're also celebrating our ability to move forward and what we will demand and what we will do and what our asks are and what we will no longer ask for. At some point, you're going to stop asking people for things and you will do what is needed to be done. And so that is what we're standing on. I'm very proud to be a part of the organizing effort in Forest Park to do this. We're modeling for our children. We're modeling for our community. We're helping some people come out of the bushes. They're nervous. They've never had to stand up for anything before, and they're having to figure out, how do I speak out? And so we have to be patient with some people who need you to hold their hands, and some people need pacifiers and baby wipes. We're going to help them too, but we will work. And if you are not prepared to work, someone will assist you in your preparation, because we are not babysitting you anymore. Black women particularly are not mammying you anymore. We are no longer nursemaids. We're not placating to pacifists. It is time to engage, and it's time to be responsible, and it's time to be accountable. And for many of us, that begins in your own neighborhood. I don't have to fly to DC in March. I don't have to fly to Minnesota. I don't need to drive into the city in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to go to 79th and Stony. I have my own neighborhood that I should be addressing these issues in my own neighborhood. And don't assume that if you live in Pleasantville, like I do, that you don't have things that are addressed, that need to be addressed in your neighborhood. And that is what we will do.
Oh man, I'm gonna tell people you my cousin. I'm gonna be like, that's my cousin, y'all. Like, I'm just claiming you as family. I'll take you to we're gonna come to the cookouts. It's gonna be great. But in all seriousness, I'm so excited to be working on this event with you. I'm so honored to be a part of it. I'm very excited to work with you further in our community to start demanding those changes. We now have our first Black mayor in Pleasantville, in Forest Park. And so like I'm very excited, and I'm very excited to see women of color leading
Black women?
This.
I'm sorry.
Let's go even. Listen, Black
Latina,
women, Black queens leading this effort. I tell you, and I would love you, because we have a few more minutes left. I would love for you to talk specifically about Black women. We have another person that said, "Can she be my cousin?" My friend Kat said, "Can she be my cousin?" And Vivian Thomas, thank you, Kate Nolan. Vivian Thomas was the gentleman we were speaking of in Something the Lord Made. But often we talk about Black men in terms of the civil rights movement. Dr. King, Brother Malcolm, Stokely, so on and so forth. But the role of Black women often gets overshadowed, because within that illusion of freedom, that constructed freedom that you so eloquently described earlier, within the reality that we have to live in, Black women have still dealt with even further oppression still from that male-female dynamic. And so I'd love if you could speak a little bit to that.
Yeah. So first, let me say that it is a convenient narrative, if you will, to create the binary of the work of Black men and Black women. I think it borrows from a very westernized approach to dealing with the relationships between family and community. When you think about who we are as African people, while you'll have roles and responsibilities that may be sort of those gender relationships and that sort of thing. But when you talk about community, your women are positioned as warriors for as much as they are positioned as wives. And to be a wife does not mean one is not a warrior. To be a warrior does not mean that one can't be maternal. And so when we think about African-American women and the way Black women have toiled in labor, we picked alongside the men, and sometimes we outpicked the men. So when we think about what it means in these relationships, unfortunately, a lot of times when people focus on the movement or the various movements, they focus on these sort of gender binary roles. And it sort of really does reflect the challenges that exist in what I'm going to refer to as a westernized culture. Many years ago, I wrote an article called Descendants of Ruth, Black Girls Coping Through the Black Male Crisis. It was published in, I think, 2011 in Urban Review. And one of the things I talked about is that, a lot of times when people talk about the Black male crisis and the challenges for Black men and the needs of Black men, they are actively erasing Black women as if those Black men didn't have mothers, those Black men didn't have sisters, those Black men just showed up out of the sun just raised and Black men just fell out of the sky. They were connected to no woman at all or ever, right? There was no fallopian tube that ever existed to create these Black men. And so when we talk about the pain or the experiences of Black men, you cannot divorce that from the existence of the mothers who created them, of the sisters who love them, the wives that love and give and nurture the daughters that they have. And so we have to actively do what systematically has been, we have to push back. We have to sort of oppose that narrative that allows people to separate Black men from Black women as if their narratives are not together, right? So when you do that, now that does not mean that there are not patriarchal experiences that Black women have that don't exist outside of that binary, because there absolutely are. We are still women. We are still raped. We are still stolen. We are still sexualized. We are still objectified. All these things still occur with Black women. But when you do trauma to a community, you're not doing trauma to a variable. You're doing trauma to the whole community. So, you know, when we talk about the power of the Black vote, the power of elections, and then you see this sort of aggregated data that talks about, you know, Black women are the ones who, you know, well, Black women have always been at the forefront. I believe that it is Sojourner Truth's moment where she asks you, ain't I a woman? You know, and she's talking overwhelmingly to white women, right? Who were conveniently engaged in their suffrage movement, but removing Black women from their womanhood while at the same time positioning themselves as needy. It's important to recognize that, you know, the first speaker in the feminist movement was Frederick Douglass, right? So here you call this Black man who's not free, who is called upon to come to Rochester to speak to white women about white women's freedom. And he has to remind them that you're asking me to be here to speak about your freedom as white women when my entire people aren't free. So his exegesis of people aren't free included women. So we have always found ways to be inclusive of one another while there are tensions in the greater society that actively pull us apart. Now, what have we seen? We have seen the trauma and the horror of life being removed from George Floyd's body. If you had I don't know what it took for one to watch the entirety of that video, but if you had the ability to watch the entirety of that video and to hear the moment that he is calling for his mother, and his mother had already long passed on, but he did not remove his mother from his need in that moment. That is a terrifying example of how one's existence and life force is always contextualized to what brings forth life. And in the process of our collective mourning, our collective outrage about what we could witness, we can only imagine what Breonna Taylor is experiencing as she is sleeping peacefully in her rest, to be shaken, awakened, and then murdered. Not with the opportunity to mourn out, cry out, or call for anyone. And in our horror of seeing what happens to George Floyd, the need and demand for justice for Breonna Taylor, he slowly is marginalized and pushed to the side. So even though the trauma and the horror of a people is persistent and it remains, and we are expected to pick ourselves up and to continue to live and smile through our Zoom calls and make happy in our meetings and go to work it the next day, you have mothers who are burying their children. You have fathers who are having to console their wives. We have to continually remind ourselves that we are a unit. We are whole. You don't get two halves to make another half. You get two halves to make a whole. And as African people, as African American people, we must persist in our suggestions and the way we treat the discourse to remember that we are a whole people, not 3/5 of a person, not 2/3 of a person, not 1/2 of a person. We are a whole people. And when you are a whole people and a whole person, you are born of a mother and father, which means you cannot exclude men from women or women from men.
Y'all see why I wanted to have Dr. Brown on today? Man, this is life. That's thank you. That yes.
We're like, what do we even say now? What do we even do? We just got to get ready for Juneteenth and prepare for the future.
You see these reacts in the thread, like your words, like they echo like the story, the totality of the Black experience and the Black anger and the Black creativity and excellence and all of it. I want to thank you so much for your words today, Dr. Brown. I'm gonna put that respect on that name. That's my cousin, y'all. She cousins on my daddy's side. But I just want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. I want to make sure everybody knows June 19th, 6 p.m., the Circle Bridge. I have the honor of emceeing. Dr. Brown is organizing this entire thing with a lot of just incredible Forest Parkers who you will see on that stage. It's going to be our call to action. It's going to be it's time to stand up. Like you said, the coddling is over. It's time to see some movement. Dr. Brown, do you have any other closing words before we let you go this evening?
Thank you so much for inviting me on. I look forward to hanging out with you all some more at any other time, whatever's going on. But again, 6 o'clock on June 19th. We want youth out there. This is a protected space. Our goal is to protect Black lives. It's to advance Black life. It's to fight for Black life. And it's also to say the names of those who are taken from us wrongfully so, while we also affirm what is our mission going forward. So we look forward, all your signs and posters, all of those things will be provided for you. I'm very proud of my colleagues and those people who are supporting. And we look forward to seeing you on Juneteenth at 6 o'clock. You can start arriving as early as 5:30 to get your posters and your signs. And we will occupy that bridge and celebrate our lives as well as mourn those who've been taken from us.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Dr. Brown. I wish you a lovely evening. Get home safe.
I will.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Wow. That was.
I don't even know who I am anymore, Maui.
Yeah. So
I think this person can make everyone rethink their world.
Yeah. So I was when I was asked if I would help with this Forest Park Juneteenth event, I was like, I've been going through a lot of personal stuff right now, and I was just like, I'm out of gas. I'm empty. I'll listen in. I'll consult. I'll offer my opinion on a couple of things. I don't have the strength to really do the thing. And then we did the Zoom meeting, and then Dr. Brown spoke, and then I was all in, and I was filled. I was refilled with that fight, with that spirit, because that's what you need sometimes, right? You need,
Mm-hmm.
So because sometimes we're all going to stumble sometimes, and when I heard Dr. Brown speak, like the second she started talking, I was just like, let's go. And I'm so happy. It's like, I'm a religious person. So like for me, I said, like God put her in my path that day, because I was and I'd been in a foul mood for days, as I'm like, I'm angry at the world. And like, every time I try and do something, like I keep, getting, pushed down and kicked, and I'm done. And then she just rebreathed that life back into me. So I just thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. That's our show. That's our show. Yeah. We just want to let her drop the mic. That's it. Remember,
I don't think there's more to say.
Yeah. If you like what you heard tonight,
Juneteenth,
6 p.m., Circle Bridge. And if you like what you heard tonight, remember to please donate to Echo Theater Collective so we can continue to do things like this. I actually have some, hopefully pretty soon, I'll be able to share some exciting announcements, not only with Echo Theater Collective, but with some new ventures that I'm working on to continue to bring this kind of culturally responsive content in a digital space. So Echo Theater Collective has a lot of exciting things on the horizon, and I have some interesting things in the works for the larger whole. Let me see if we have anything else. Let me see anything. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think that's about it. Remember, you can find us at Echo Theater Collective on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. We all over the place. Lotus, where can people find you?
You can find me at Lotux Design on Twitter or Lotus_level up on Instagram.
And I'm on Twitter. I'm Maui Thoughts, and Instagram I'm Mr. Maui Jones. So thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody. Remember, in all things, echo love. Night, everybody.
Bye.